Cry It Out Loud, a podcast by Chasing the Rainbows with your host, Bernice Quisenberry.
This week's episode is Educate to Advocate, and it's with Ana Vick, who is one of the parents who founded Push Pregnancy after her own devastating loss of her son, Owen. She is a strong advocate for maternal fetal health, and we can't thank you enough, Ana, for coming on here and opening up the dialogue for those who have lost babies and are going on a pregnancy after loss journey to feel validated, heard, and seen. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate your space. I always feel so honored when I get invited on a podcast because I like to do them myself, and I'm usually hearing other people's stories, and I think it's just so, honestly, as a parent who's 8 years down the line, I don't get to talk about Owen all the time, so it just makes my heart feel so good that I get to talk about Owen a little bit extra today, and all the impact that he's having in the world of maternal health and every way that we can.
Yeah, and he really is. And exactly, that leads us right into, I would love for you to share more about Owen, yourself, just for our listeners and survivors to hear on here.
Thank you. Well, my name was Ana Vick, in case you didn't hear at the beginning. I'm actually Mexican American, so I speak Spanish. So I do attempt to translate some of the work that I do in Spanish because there is, disparities in outcomes. And I'm thinking a lot of it has to do with access, of course, to information. And, when it comes to language, that can also be a barrier. So I work very hard as a volunteer for Push for Empowered Pregnancy to kind of get the word out about stillbirth prevention, because when we were pregnant with our second child, Owen, we knew nothing about stillbirth. And that's a big part of my journey now, is just learning everything I can about prevention of stillbirth. A big part of it is just making people aware. And for me, it was a low risk pregnancy. Like we were talking, my first child was also normal, but she became breech and she just would not turn around. So Naomi was born healthy and beautiful. She's a full-term baby, and God blessed us with her first, and I'm very grateful that I had her. And then we wanted to have more siblings for her, so we started trying to conceive again about a year or so after, and we had a miscarriage, and it was early on, so we really didn't think anything was wrong yet with our situation. So of course, they tell you just go get pregnant again. You can do it again in a certain amount of months. Sure, okay. And it was devastating. It was very crushing to go through that. So we waited the appropriate amount of time, and then we tried again. And luckily, we got pregnant with Owen pretty quickly, easily. We were actually on vacation in Santa Barbara. I remember we're just like, oh, we were pregnant. It's just the whole thing. Like everything was going smoothly, beautifully. The pregnancy was normal. Nothing was complicating it at all, really. Until the end, I started to feel a little bit weak. And then it got to a point where I was super faint. Like I had to sit down and do my makeup before work. And I would just sit on the couch. I was like, oh, I can't do this, So then I started to tell my boss, I'm like, is there any way I could work from home? And, they kind of pushed it off for quite a while, finally telling me that they couldn't make that work for them. So I ended up quitting. Because of safety, I didn't want to faint on the road,
Right.
And then I was home with my daughter now, and she was about 3, and I had already been working since she was 6 weeks old. So I felt like this gave me some time with her. And, now I get to be full-time mom. It was awesome. So I went with her everywhere. I took her all day long to things. The night that Owen passed away actually was like a full day of Naomi time, because I was thinking, I'm going to have another child soon. She won't get this one-on-one time anymore. So I took her to the library. We did this fun little thing they had in the morning. Took her out to lunch. I remember we even sat with some police officers. It was very random, but it was just such an interesting day. So I remember all these little things. And then we went to a shop. She looked at all these things. I got her shoes for ballet. We went to ballet, met my husband, and then we went to dinner. And then he took her home. And then I went to my friend's flower shop because she was getting ready for a show. And then I was home really late. This was a long day, but the whole time, I always felt really healthy. And actually at this point, I actually had my energy back, which was interesting to me now. I'm thinking, the whole time I was faint, we were having an issue with my son and I didn't know it. And my husband and I both told the doctors, every appointment, we were like, something's a little off. And, they kind of write you off sometimes, oh, that's just normal pregnancy symptom. And it's your second child and it's a boy. It might be different for you, all these things. So they never actually checked anything about him other than telling me to take more iron, which I did. And then I still kind of felt the weakness. But other than that, there was really nothing. And then that night, I did start to feel change of movement. And it was super late, so I was laying there by myself, just having a little bite to eat or something. And I was watching TV. You just get like a feeling. And a lot of parents have mentioned like it's an
Yeah.
intuition, kind of like you're so connected with your baby. So I was like, something's off, something's weird. So I went upstairs, put some clothes on. My husband's like, what's wrong? He was laying down already because it was, later in the evening. And he actually got food poisoning from that restaurant we went to, which
Oh,
is
geez.
another horrible part of the story. He had to deal with all this with the sick tummy. But so I said, I'm just going to go get checked out. He even had me lay down. He held my tummy. He's like, no, I felt him. He's probably sleeping. Like it's almost midnight or something. So I'm like, no, I just need that reassurance. I'm going into like the closest hospital, not even where I wanted to give birth or anything. And then I'll be back. And then, my daughter was also sleeping. So I'm like, you guys just stay here. And then I get in and I'm just crying, like I just felt like there's something totally wrong now. Like my tummy was always pretty stiff and it was like kind of limp at that point. And, I never heard of stillbirth. I didn't know nothing. I didn't know my baby was dying. Like I had no clue. Like
Right.
no clue at all. And then they were checking me in, taking some time, and they just kept telling me everything's gonna be okay. Finally get the monitor on me, and I heard a heartbeat. I had my husband on the phone. So we both were like, okay, we're relieved. He's fine. Freaked out for nothing. I'm gonna go home soon. So I hang up. And then I'm still there. Nobody communicated anything. They were doing ultrasound, and the tech was so quiet. And I remember I was like, I need her to say something. Like I just started getting a little stressed out about it.
Yeah.
Like, is it still a boy? Like just kind of joking. Like we're at 31 weeks and 5 days. And she's like, I don't check for those things when I do these. I was like, okay, so what are you checking for? But I didn't
Yeah.
ask. Like I just shut up, because that's basically what she wanted. And so I just
Yeah.
sat there again, like laying there, and I'm like, this is so strange. And I actually have a picture of my belly. Took a picture of when I had the NST, the band on my tummy, and that's like the last picture I have of me pregnant. But yeah, soon they were like, the doctor's here. How low is the heart rate now, or what's the heart rate at? And that woman, again, with her little attitude, was like, now, like I'm in the middle of something kind of thing. They're like, yes, he's here now. He wants to know what's the heart rate? See, I turned red. I told her I get highs when I talk about this. And she said the number, which I don't know the numbers too. Again, I'm not a doctor. It was super low. So then everyone comes flying in. And again, no one had given me the heads up. So my husband's not there. And I'm like, my husband's not here to see his baby be born. Like, what's going on? So they're just like, well, this is the only chance for, we need to do this. And you can call him, but he probably won't make it. So I call my husband on speaker, freaking out. And he's like, don't worry, I'll get there as soon as I can. He got a friend to come and watch our daughter. And he, raced over there. Meanwhile, they're rushing me. I signed some papers, signed my life away because they got to cut me open. And then they started put the mask on my face, and they hadn't told me what they were doing. They're just like, I looked at the woman. I'm like, what are you doing to me? And she's just
Yeah.
like, oh, this is the quickest way for putting you under, start to count or whatever. And I just started praying. I was like, God, please don't let me die here. Like, I seriously thought that was it. Like, I'm going to be cut open and my family will never see me and my daughter. I was like, just I need to be here for my husband, my daughter. And I said, like, please protect my son. And at the time, his name was Jackson. I should have brought that thing. I had made him a sign that said Jackson that matches this, actually, from his design for his room. My husband and I had agreed that I would choose the name, though, because it was a boy. So regardless, I would be able to choose. And I started praying, and I just heard the word Owen Nathaniel, like that would be his name, which I always like. I guess God chose his name for me. I'm not like a super. I'm religious, but like I'm not like a person who like ever had that experience before of God speaking to me or anything. So it was just surreal. So I fell asleep. I'm black, and I wake up to, darkness still because I'm coming out of it. But my husband was there. I could tell something was wrong. And then
Oh,
that doctor came in. They said, we're sorry he didn't make it. Your son has died, or however they said it. And you know how that is. It's just like out of body, like
Yes.
screams, like the guttural scream of like a wounded animal. And I just couldn't stop screaming and yelling and like crying. And then my husband said, I kept asking him because I kept coming out of it like
Yeah.
throughout that next few hours, and like, where's my baby? Like, I didn't know again. And I don't remember that part, but apparently I had to keep explaining to me that Owen had died. And then finally, when I was normal, they were like, you want to hold your child. I was so scared. I even took a video of myself saying, like, I really don't know, like, if I can do this. You don't know what they're going to even look like. And he wasn't full term, but he was close. He was only 2 months shy of his actual due date.
Right.
So they told me, you're going to want to hold him, which I'm thankful they encouraged that. And then I did. And nothing can explain how hard that is. Yeah.
Absolutely not. And Anna, thank you so much for sharing. Oh,
This is my
it
son
really is.
right here. And the little beanie they gave us with, so I keep it in a little shadow box. And I mean, he was 4 pounds, 2 ounces, 18 and a half inches long. So he was a good size already. And I'm thankful.
Aw.
I do have some photos, and I didn't know about taking video, or, I didn't think to change him myself, or, a lot of people now talk a lot more about bereavement care. And I'm grateful for all the groups like yours too, that encourage families to have those moments, because you can't get them back.
Can't.
I held him a lot. When I held him, I was just like, this feels like I'm his mom. And like, people would come in and talk with me. And I remember one of my friends, the one that was the florist I was helping, came through, and she sat there for hours just chatting with me. And I'm like, she just gave me that gift of feeling normal. Like, she didn't look at him weird or anything. And, they do start to change, and you can't have them for too long. But I mean, the minute
Yeah.
I had him already, he had already been changed, because I was put under, so I missed out on seeing him fresh from my womb, and he wasn't warm anymore, so it's such a devastating way to meet your child. But
Oh,
it's
Hannah.
important for people to have that time.
Absolutely. I mean, that time is so precious, and it is. It's valuable for us. I know, and I feel like it wasn't enough time, to be honest. We had a couple hours with our daughter, and I could have done a couple days, and just not having that, and oh,
Yeah. So,
just
and
going through. Yeah.
I had the C-section, so,
Yep.
they want you there a little longer after, but I was like, as soon as I can walk, I need to get out. But, also they had me on the floor that they had other mothers. So I was supposed to be walking the floor so that I can get, your bowels moving, everything normal again. And I had to walk past rooms with babies crying and all that. And my mom
Mm.
was with me. I remember her just holding me up, and I was like, this is torture, you know?
Yeah.
And then I came back to my room, where it was quiet and dark, and they have you in there. It's like they don't come by too much sometimes. They try to give you your time, but at the same time, you just feel like, oh my God, no one wants to talk to me. Like, and
Yeah.
I was like, as soon as I can get out of here, I need to get out of here, because I had my daughter and she was going to preschool in like next couple of days, and I was like, I need to go and explain to the teachers in case she says anything about her little brother who's an angel now. I didn't want anyone to be like, what are you talking about? Um,
Yeah.
and we had to pick his funeral arrangements, and I didn't want my husband to go alone to that cemetery. So I
Yeah.
just pushed my body out, and then you have to go your service if you have one, and which we did, and it was really nice. We had a lot of family come through, and a lot of his coworkers actually showed up. He used to work at Warner Brothers, and they let the whole set out early so they can all come. So it was really special. They all came and, honored him. And my daughter was there. I didn't want her to see him though, so she actually didn't meet Owen. I didn't know how that imprint would be in her memory.
Yep.
So she was there for the funeral, but she never actually saw him.
Yeah.
Just in the casket. And then we did like a balloon release. I told everyone, I don't want to talk about dying. I just want everyone to say he's an angel. He went to heaven. Like, I just felt really concerned about her more than anything. And then after, now, of course, as you go through it, you're just like, okay, I kind of wish she had met him, because now I don't have one picture with them together. And
Right.
I don't know if she wanted that memory, but I do remember when she saw a picture of me and my husband next to my bed, on the many days after where I was just crying, crying. She would sit there with me in the rocking chair that I was supposed to be breastfeeding Owen in. It was in my corner of my room. And she would sit and just kind of hang out while I was like laying in bed. And she saw the photo and she said, "Whose baby is that?" And I was like, "That's your brother." She's like,
Oh,
so like the confusion in her head, I just was like, oh no, she doesn't understand that he actually was born and died, like technically at the same time on my case. But um,
yeah.
she kind of, I think, with the way I described it, thought like he just went from my belly to heaven or something like that, and nobody saw him, nobody got to hold him. And then she did say something like, "Well, I didn't get to meet him." Like, I was like, "Oh gosh, I didn't even
I
think
know.
about that." But
I
we did
know.
what we could, and the whole after part, you have postpartum, the milk comes in. It's
Yep.
again all the torture of a new mom, but no baby there. Went through a lot of hard times with the birth certificate. I was told that he was getting one. I went to go get it finally, like a month or two later. And they told me, like, he's not in the system. And I went through all this hassle to try to figure out what's going on. And then they said, well, technically, they shouldn't have told you that you can have one because he's actually considered a stillbirth. Like, the hospital finally told me they messed it all up. And so I had to go through all this extra trauma. Like, you're not acknowledging my baby's birth, even though he died, he was born. So all
Exactly.
that to say, eventually they also didn't help me find a cause of death. My husband and I went to get some meetings with them, and they just sat there across the table with like no paperwork, nothing, and just like, "We're so sorry for your loss." And we're like, "Yeah, but what happened? Can we review my
Right.
medical records? I want to have more kids. I need to know what happened." And all my doctor was like, "Sometimes healthy babies just die." And I'm like, "Wow, okay,
Yeah.
that's not useful for me now." And it's also terrifying, like I'm going to get pregnant again, and who knows what's going to happen to that next baby. So I was
Exactly.
deep into this like ongoing research thing. Like I would go to bed with the phone by my bed and just like, what does this word mean? And like read all the research, like trying to figure out what are the causes, what's happening. So that went on forever, and then got together with the women who are now the Push for Empowered Pregnancy founders, and we
Yeah.
decided to start the organization almost 3 years ago, and we were talking about we need to make a lot of noise. We're very like we're advocacy based kind of group. Like we're just about trying to implement changes in the medical system, trying to see some legislative change happen so that we can have consistent care across the country, and also pushing hard on pregnancy after loss care because as we've talked about before, it's very different. Sometimes you do get great care after loss, but we do want to have people trained with like trauma informed care, which is one of the programs we offer. So if anyone's interested, you don't have to have a Rainbow Clinic. You could just take that online,
Yeah.
which it's really important, I think, to be able to talk to us properly about, even the past pregnancy situation. So, and, we did
Agreed.
go through a lot, like to try to get the next child here. So I did have a miscarriage after that. And I just felt like I was broken. I was like, my womb broke. Like, I don't know what happened. I had one good baby. Like, she was born normal. Then everything
Right.
started happening. And I just couldn't understand it. But ended up with that pregnancy, I was with a good doctor. He's a high risk doctor. I really trusted him. And he just told me, like, it's kind of bad luck, really. There's no reason why this is happening to you. So I was like, oh, great. Another person who's telling me, you know,
Right.
answers, just try again.
Right. And we do. We want those answers. We want to know something, and just giving us some peace with it because there's so many questions we have. Well, and I don't know about you, Anna, too, but I felt like, is this something like you said, like your womb's broken, like, is there something wrong with me or what did I do? Because there's all of those feelings that are flooding over us when we're going through our baby losses.
hmm Yeah. So what we did was obviously just keep going to this guy. At the time, I didn't know. I was like, what else can I do?
Yeah.
Did the
Yeah.
genetic testing. That was okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know. So I looked at the causes of stillbirth, and like a lot of things can happen at the end, which we didn't know about, the cord issues and
Yeah.
placenta issues and all that. But I remember I insisted. I said, I want to take baby aspirin, even though like I had no medical reason for it really, but I knew that helped in some pregnancies. And I did think, I'm like, I might have a blood clotting issue, but we didn't find it. So I just want to do this. So he actually was accepting of a lot of the things that I pushed on, and he let me take that eventually. And, I did have issues. So it wasn't a fun pregnancy. It was a high risk pregnancy already because of the stillbirth. And then it became
Right.
a high risk pregnancy on its own because I got a competent cervix at 20 weeks. And so basically my next son was coming too soon. And we had, thankfully, a successful cerclage surgery. And then they put me on
Yeah.
17 weeks of bed rest, well, the rest of the pregnancy.
Yeah.
So it was very hard because, especially with the mentality of like a lost mom, like something's gonna happen, and I'm just laying here, I'm just laying here like crocheting everything I could and reading and watching everything on TV and trying to get my mind off it. Did a lot of support groups on Zoom and everything, and that helps a lot. I think if you're going through a pregnancy after loss, like make sure you find some community. I remember I even had one specific friend, and she's in Australia, and we would just message each other because we were going through it at the same time, and that just we just like pulling each other along, like, all right, made it another week.
Yes. Because it's mentally and emotionally just draining. You're living what we just went through all over again. You don't like, I swear, me going into, and I don't, like going into doctor's appointments,
Yeah.
ultrasound appointments,
Oh, yeah.
it's a trigger. Like, am I going to walk into something that I'm not ready for? You
Yeah,
know?
that's exactly what happened. Every ultrasound was like torture, especially with my
Yes.
doctor because he was very quiet. He's an older man. He's very amazing, but like he's not very good at bedside manner, I would say, and
Yeah.
like communicating. So I would just sit there and I'm like trembling, like, oh my God, he's gonna say something's wrong right now. And which he did at that 20-week mark. And I was just like, oh my God, we're losing another baby right now. Like I didn't know what was gonna
Yeah.
happen. He's like, put your clothes on. I'm gonna get, they get the nurse to deliver the bad news with them. And so it's like, this is not sounding good, Josh. I
Oh,
just looked at Josh. I'm like, oh my God. And thank God it wasn't the baby, it was just the cervix and all that. So they could fix that. But it wasn't even a guarantee, of course. And a lot of people that lose a baby with the cerclage end. So we got
yeah.
very lucky, but I had a lot of people, coming and supporting the family. Like I couldn't move. I was supposed to just be laying down all day, every day. Even couldn't do even cooking or even like
Yeah.
putting some dishes in the dishwasher. Like this is how intense bed rest is. If anyone is told they're doing bed rest, it's much worse than you could even think.
Oh,
And
yeah.
my husband stepped up obviously a lot. And then we had family members and people staying with us here and there. And a lot of friends would drop off food. Like it was one of those times. I think it was very humbling for me because you know how you get with your work and everything, you just feel like you could take care of yourself and your family and you got to. And
Yeah.
then when you can't, it's like, where's my community? Oh my God. And they just start stepping up for you. And it's just like so beautiful when you see like what they'll do for your family, and
Yeah.
they all help my new Jackson get here safely. So we ended up naming the last one Jackson. So
Oh,
just to wrap up that story, it was during that period that I was like, relying heavily on just my faith and trying to like get myself through that pregnancy after loss. And I did come across a woman who had several miscarriages. I remember her story. And she mentioned that she had this feeling like that God had promised her a child. So she was just going to keep trying. And I'm like, well, maybe that's why I didn't end up naming him Jackson because God promised me I will have a son named Jackson. And that wasn't him, unfortunately. So like it just, the name got changed on me, and I was like, I'm going to have a son and his name will be Jackson. And then when we found out we were pregnant with Jackson, it was crazy because we waited for genetic testing, we're trying to be safe,
yeah.
got the news, everything was fine. So we're like, let's try. And we tried and we got pregnant right away. And the due date was actually Owen's birthday. So of
Oh
every
my
date that you
goodness.
can get for the next pregnancy. So we're like, well, that's a sign. And Owen's, sending us Jackson. And, he's here now. He's 6. He's amazing. And, my husband always reminds me, we don't know if we would have had them both, but that stuff really doesn't help me. And I know a lot of grieving parents get told things like that by other
No.
people, like, "Oh, you could have another child," and, like, but I see
Ah,
my missing child in the picture, like, I have a 12-year-old and I have a 6-year-old. That's a 6-year gap of the children I'm raising, and
yeah.
Owen would be 8, so I'm like, he's the perfect middle child. He would have bounced off both of them, and my
Yeah.
son would have a little, big brother to hang out with, and it's just hard for me when someone says something like that to not feel
Oh,
like that does not
yeah.
help.
No, those we call them like throwaway comments, or when you're sharing about your loss and in the same breath they say, you should, or at least, it's like I just shut down, with whatever's going to come out of their mouth next, just
Mhm.
because it's normally something that I don't want to hear. And if a survivor believes that, great, and they say it,
Right.
great, but not, because I know I was the same way. Um,
Yeah,
and
and
I
that's
feel
not
like it
nice.
happens a lot with miscarriage. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I
Agreed
mean,
there.
no one understands the level of trauma for miscarriage for a woman. Like, every time I would have my
No.
period, I would be terrified. Even if I wasn't trying, I thought
Yeah.
I was miscarrying, like, "I'm just
Yes.
miscarrying every month now." Like, that's all I think
Yes.
about when I'm having blood come out, and it's not normal,
Yes.
but it's just like it's such a trauma in your body now that no matter what, it comes to mind.
Absolutely.
And, even with miscarriage, like, the way that we're treated, you're
Oh,
supposed to just do it alone at home, no medication, like, just see
yeah.
what happens to you kinda thing. And I remember my miscarriage was the worst because I actually felt like I had labor pains because I had gone from the baby supposedly passing around 6 weeks, and I didn't wanna go through any additional stuff, in case I wanna get pregnant, which I did again. So I was like, "No, I don't wanna go through a D&C or anything." So I just wanted my body to naturally miscarry, and it took till 11 weeks. And then at that
Wow.
point, my body had been hanging on to this pregnancy, and I felt so pregnant still. I thought I was having twins the whole time. I felt super pregnant with that pregnancy. And then when it finally happened, it was like I was miscarrying, but I was feeling like I was in labor. Like, it was so painful. I
Yeah.
was at home and I called the hospital, the doctor. I was like, something's wrong. Like, I'm bleeding way too much. Like, and they're just like, well, unless it's this much or this much clots. And you're like, well, I don't know. And you're like, am I hemorrhaging? Like, you don't actually know how much blood is too much, but yet they don't really want you in the hospital miscarrying. They want you to just do this at home.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm so sorry for anyone who's had miscarriage too, because like it's so discounted and
Oh,
so traumatizing too.
it really is. And
Yeah.
Anna, I can't thank you enough for being on here, for sharing your story, allowing survivors, to hear what you've been through and your losses of your sweet, precious babies, and just all the work that you're doing, for survivors that, that either they were or weren't aware of. It's just so beautiful. And I'm just grateful to have you a part of, our community, and you getting on this podcast. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And if anyone is at all interested in what we do, we always love having volunteers at Push. And you don't have to do anything, or you could just, come along when you see something you're interested in. And, a lot of us like to go to DC and advocate, which I hope we're going to see you there next time.
Yes, yes.
So
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being involved and, yeah, making a difference and
those
really
are,
our numbers.
yeah,
Yeah.
those are like the best for me, even though so far we haven't passed the two bills we're trying to pass, the Shine for Autumn Act and the Stillbirth Prevention Act. They're two great bills that are bipartisan. And if anyone sees those links, please go ahead and share and go and get in touch with your legislators too, because we still need co-sponsorship. But it still feels great because at least you're telling your child's story to people
Yeah.
that can create change. And it does matter. They actually listen to us. They sit there. Usually it's an illegal aid or the aid for the senator or the representative you're meeting with. But I have met with some of the actual representatives in person too, and they give you their time. And it's just amazing when you feel like something's happening from it, which is a big part, I think, of the loss after. It's kind of why some people, and myself included, carry a lot of anger because we're like, this isn't right and they're not changing. And but if you use
Right.
your voice and you put your story out there and then you see something happen, like a bill passed, or maybe your hospital decides to start handing out count the kicks brochures and things like that, then you feel like a little less, the anger, kind of subsides. And then you can kind of focus more on your grief and your journey and, how you can parent your child after loss, which is what I feel like I'm doing with this work. So, you
Yeah.
don't have to live like that forever. But, I do get my rage modes and I get kind of like, you'll see me on social media. If you follow my Still My Son page, that's my personal one. Um, I'm
Yeah.
okay with that because I think it's not right what has happened to so many of us. And I think rage is a powerful emotion as well. But like, I like to channel it when I can and actually, like, I'm not
Yeah.
just mad, but like, let's do something about it. Let's stop
Yes.
letting babies die. Let's protect
Yep.
these families and like mothers too that are like their lives are on the line. And we don't realize that when we become pregnant pregnant. I'm like, a lot of us just focus on how are you going to decorate this nursery and what the name's going to be. And it's like, no, you really need to be paying really close attention to how you're feeling, how your baby's feeling, and also making sure that you're being heard and getting someone to back
Yes.
you up, have a doula, which is really becoming more popular now. And
Yeah.
do whatever you need to do and go get a second opinion. Those are
Yes.
options for you. You don't need to sit there and just be brushed aside.
Exactly. And just accept what you're being told almost. And it's so true with being so in tuned with your body and listening, and also then going and speaking and going into your provider and mentioning this is what's happening, this doesn't feel right, and really like pushing them to do more further testing if they're not willingly going to do it. And
Right, which is,
on Anna.
I highlight that a lot with my pregnancy after loss because I did have the best care available, I thought,
Yeah.
and I do think they're amazing, but they don't know me, they don't know my body. And I kept telling them, I have an infection, something's going on here. And I'd come in and they test me and like, nope, you're good. And I'm like, are you sure? The next time I came in, I was crying. I was telling the woman, I'm like, I think you're missing something. I'm really scared I'm gonna lose my baby. And I was just crying. I just couldn't help myself. And she's
Yeah.
just like, well, what else can I do to make you feel better? There's this one last test, but I don't think you have that. I'm like, please do it. And anything else you can think of. And then she
Yeah.
called me the next day. She said, you were right, Anna. You have a GVS infection and it's pretty high in the BV and all that stuff. So we do need to give you medication. But then the baby will be fine. I'm like, wait a minute, back up. Like you just told me basically if I hadn't pushed so dang hard, you would have
Yes.
missed this one. And then maybe I would have had a preterm birth. Maybe the infection would have led to stillbirth again. I was just like, this is insane. And I just think
Right.
Owen, I mean, he's the one who's changed who I am in a medical setting for sure that, I know now, like you can't just trust others and their tests and what they're doing
Yeah.
be right. You know yourself more than they do, and the baby too. Like you're feeling the movements. That baby's acting different. You need to go in. Don't take your time. Don't drink juice. Don't start a new kick count. Don't call the doctor and let them talk you out of it. Just go and get checked out if you feel anything is wrong, because that's the only way that they're going to be able to verify. And
Yeah.
don't just check the heartbeat. The heartbeat's the last to go. Make sure
Yeah.
they have the full ultrasound NST done and everything. But even if that happens, a lot of people come back and then the baby has died. So I just want to, reinforce, even if they've done all their tests and you still feel something's wrong, you need to keep pushing and stay there or come back as many times as you need until your baby's home safely in your arms.
And thank you so much, Anna, for leaving our listeners with that and sharing that, because it's so important that because we're the ones that are at home living with our baby inside of us. Our doctors aren't there. They're not experiencing what we are. No one can see. There's no crystal ball. Like no one, we will only get answers if we go seek treatment, go in, get tests ran, and figuring out what it is. I swear that intuition is so important. And it was something that I felt with our Brooke too. And I wish, I would have pushed more for more answers and things during that time, but
Yeah. But it's
it
hard
is.
to know, I think, and I want to give just grace to all of us. Like we don't
Yeah.
know that
You
this could
don't
ever.
know what you don't know, right, and it's true, so
And
and
if it
thank you.
does, I'm so sorry for anyone's loss. And definitely go to Chasing the Rainbows for your support. I know Push is going to start trying to have these kind of meetings where we just chat, but we don't have the support angle. So that's all you guys. And if you want
Yeah,
to advocate and we can kind of mix it up here, we're going to support each other because, we definitely need more voices together. And don't be shy. You can DM me anytime. I love to chat and any time of day if you need help
yeah.
here.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Anna. I appreciate that and for you being on. And like Anna said, we do have our daily support services. So we have our support groups, our peer mentors, this podcast, individual trauma therapy, whatever anybody may need. We're here for you. And we're always with you, baby loss survivors. So please tune in and follow us so we can reach more of you. All right. Until next time. Thank you so much again, Anna.
Bye. Thank you guys. Thank
Bye.
you.